what's possible. Having said that, when we hopefully at one stage someone's going to drop a huge pile of gold in our lap, we can actually turn our raw materials over to biodegradable ones, and we're doing a costing exercise at the moment to do that. But it will cost about 3 times as much to produce a more positive pad than it would do to the one that we have now. So again, it's a financial thing, and it's because the commercial industry in our world hasn't gone over that tipping point of women absolutely insisting that what we buy is biodegradable.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the success stories that have come out of the incredible work that you're doing?
Gosh, well, on the face of it, like just the top line, 1,000 girls a month are being helped in the slum now, which is fabulous. In Jordan last year, we made and distributed over 4,000 nappies. So the top line is that, the work's getting done. Eventually, we're really having the impact we want. We, as a result of the factory in the slum, employ 5 women. In Jordan, we employ 8 women. So not only are we helping people with the product, we're giving jobs, and for the people who we give jobs to, they're able to support their families better. So it sort of is on many levels. On the top line, when I started this, I didn't think that I had no perception that our work would help people financially. So on the top line, we're distributing products, we're creating jobs. I was just saying that I didn't have any idea that what I set out to do would impact people financially. Like, it just hadn't got there for me. When we left the refugee camp, the Norwegian Refugee Council, who we were working with, did a monitoring and an evaluation report, and the people who received and used our nappies saved 25% of their monthly income, which is huge.
Wow.
Absolutely huge. So I had no idea that would happen. So that was exciting. I mean, 25% is a huge amount of money, isn't it? And then on the other level, the success for me is in the small things that happen. And I suppose in the camp, one of the lovely things that happened is that in a refugee camp, there's maybe some kind of presumption that people will just kind of know each other, and that's not the case, obviously. And one day I was working in the factory with the women, and I said to them, "Do you see each other outside of work?" It's generally all been abused by them, so they're very vulnerable. And they said, "Yeah, actually every Saturday now we get together in each other's tent and we have a coffee, and we've become each other's support network." And I'm like, "Oh, how amazing and how touching!" And then at another moment, I was working in the church after we moved out of the camp. We are in the compound of a church now, and the women in the refugee camp were Muslim and from Syria, and the women in the church where we work are from Iraq, and they're Christian. So it was fascinating for me to work with 2 Middle Eastern cultures, but one be Muslim and one be Christian. And the Muslim ladies were terrified of coming down to the church, saying, "Amy, I can't go into the church. It's against my beliefs. I'm really terrified." I said, "Darling, don't worry. I'll look after you. The factory's just in a room next door to the church. You don't have to go into the church. Everything will be fine." And so they come down, and we have the Christians and the Muslims working together, and these women, and they were being really funny, going, "Oh, I'm better sewer than her. She's not very good. I'm bad." And 10 minutes later, they're like best mates, making nappies, and it's all peace and love. And then it gets to lunchtime, and I suddenly realize that I'm supposed to provide lunch because nobody else is there and whatever. So I go out with my interpreter, and we go and buy some chicken and rice and come back to the church. And there's a cutting table which hasn't quite made it into the factory, sitting in the middle of this compound, this church compound. And so there we are, there's about 10 of us standing around this table, and one of the ladies lifting up her hijab and eating her chicken and rice very gracefully. And another of the ladies, who's Christian, turns around to me and she says, "Amy, isn't it crazy that you have to come all the way from the UK to make us friends?" And you're like, "Oh, I think I'm, cry ready to go home now." The whole point is that we're the same, and we get so confused by what we look like or by what we believe. And to have a little magical moment of some people realizing, in the midst of war, I mean, the interpreter who works for us, his brother was shot by a Muslim in Iraq because he had a cross hanging from his car mirror. He literally walked up the car window and shot him. And so these are people who've experienced such enormous loss and tragedy and war. So for me to say, oh, the Christian and Muslim making friends, isn't that lovely? I'm like, it's amazing when people can set aside what they've lost to see the humanity in each other. And that's just so wonderful and so sad that we can't see that automatically in each other immediately.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about what's coming up? I know everything is on hold at the moment because of coronavirus, but post-corona, talk about what's coming up next for you. You said you're expanding into Zimbabwe and Uganda. What your plans are, if you can share any of that.
Yeah, so the first thing will be, I'll go to Iraq to set up the factory there. The thing that's going to happen at the same time as that is that we're shipping 3 factories to Kenya. Actually 2, I beg your pardon. One of them is going to a project north of Nairobi where this amazing Englishman called David Baldwin looks after a parish or supports a parish, and the organization that he runs feeds 1,500 kids a day, and they've set up the most amazing project, a residential project for girls to go off and spend time for a week with each other instead of being cut. He does amazing work, and we really struggled to get tax exemptions into Kenya, but now we're working alongside the government. It's all going to happen, so that's so exciting. Also, at the end of last year, we partnered with the PAD Project, which is an amazing American teacher who made a film about one of these Indian factories, and they filmed the village before the factory arrived and after, and the impact of it. And she got an Oscar. Melissa Burton got an Oscar for this, and we've partnered because as a result of their work, they're looking for factories to put into places, and ours is very simple and does what it says on the tin. So we're working with them. We're sending them a factory in Kenya, and we're also sending raw materials to resupply the current factory. I'm also trying to get hold of people in high places in Uganda to get tax exemptions there, where we've also, with the PAD project, got some other factories going in. We've got 2 factories wanting to go into Uganda. And for ages, again, the same with Zimbabwe, we're trying to get tax exemptions into Zimbabwe so we can send a factory there. But basically, the plan from now on is to set up hubs in these countries, to send 3 factories at a time, so that the logistical costs of shipping and setup are much cheaper for everybody, and we'll take care of those logistics to enable in-country partners to set up factories more easily without having to deal with those logistics.
If someone is listening and they are really connecting with your work, how can people support what you do?
There's a few things. One of them would be, if you have amazing skills that are transferable to a charity, then do get in touch, particularly fundraising. If you have fundraising skills, that'd be cool. The other thing that we set up is called the Heart of Loving Humanity. And the Heart is a group of people who give £5 or more a month, and £5 a month which translates as keeping 10 girls in school a month. That is massive. And that's our lifeline at the moment. And if you're wealthier than that and you want to give us a lovely big present, then that's amazing. And you can find our details on our website. So yeah, you can just join us.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is so amazing. And what you've said about the cultural perspective around menstruation, but also reusable versus disposable pads, and thinking about what these girls and women actually need in the environment they're in is really important, because I think that people do get quite single-minded about, okay, it has to be reusable. We have to think a bit about the environment, but it also has to be practical for these girls and these women, so they don't put themselves in danger trying to just do the best for their menstrual needs.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm really passionate about the environment. I mean, it's so sad what we've done collectively it's so sad. But our behavior shouldn't be translated in not allowing other people who are a hell of a lot poorer than us to have access to the things that they need just to maintain their dignity. I mean, in the slum, the girls cut up their mattresses. That's how they manage their periods.
Oh my God.
So, you know, it's kind of like, really, are you going to start stamping your feet about some sanitary pads? You know, one of the things that we're aiming to do when we're more in charge of these projects is to put incinerators in to the schools so that the girls can automatically take care of their own waste. So at least our bubble of the little world that we're providing pads to will be sustainable in that sense, that we won't be adding to more, you know, mess everywhere. But yeah, I mean, we're so lucky, you know, we're just so lucky. And, you know, going to Kenya was possibly the most upsetting thing I've had to deal with. And the reason we're working there is because an Australian team of people made a film about an Australian woman who was gang raped in Nairobi, a humanitarian aid worker. And instead of going back to Australia, she took her rape case through the courts, and it took her 8 years. It was the first rape case that was heard, and they changed the rape law as a result. And the filmmakers who made this story, when they were filming, learned about the girls not going to school because of lack of pads. And they were Lois Harris, who funded the project. She was having a meeting with the heads of the villages, the women heads of the villages in the slum. So there were about 20 women in the room. And she said, could you please put up your hand if your first sexual experience was consensual? And one woman put up her hand. You know, they are living in such a different world. And occasionally I watch films about the girls in Kibera being filmed. And they talk about, you know, we have lots of things to deal with. We have lots of challenges. Oh my gosh, do they? You know, rape is a normal thing. I mean, how could you possibly say that? It, you know, physical abuse and threat and, you know, trading sex for pads. These girls are offered 50p for sex regularly by their peers, you know, by boys. And, you know, the violence against women is awful. If you become a widow in Kenya, it's completely acceptable that you're gang raped by the rest of the men in the village. You know, these are conversations I've had with women who go through this. And so we can't even begin really to understand. And when I came home, it took me about 3 weeks to process really the horrible things I'd seen and the reality of it. So I really wish that women here would just take a moment to fully acknowledge how lucky we are, and to realize that the shift in the planet and all the environmental changes, everything that we're wanting to see, will not happen until we lift the whole of the planet up. So, you know, I might be, I believe that, you know, I don't think I'm crazy. I think that we're not treating each other right. We're not kind to each other, and we don't respect each other, and we're not kind to the planet, and we don't respect the planet. And when we do look after each other and love each other, we'll change overnight.
If someone's listening to this and you want them to take one thing from all of the amazing things you've said, what would you want that to be?
I would love it for women and men to know that they are unbelievably powerful and that they can be the change that they want to see in the world.
Amazing. How can people get in touch with you?
My telephone number's on our website, which is lovinghumanity.org.uk. My email address is there. If I don't respond, for goodness sake, keep at me. I'm best on WhatsApp. So if you take that telephone and put it into WhatsApp, you know, I'm really easy to get a hold of. And if you're studying, you want to talk about it, you want to talk about, you know, poverty, period poverty, anything, I'm really available. And, you know, I love what I do, and I love the people who I meet through what I do. You know, I actually often say to people, I feel a little bit spoiled, like I'm in a Harry Potter movie and I'm the person in Hogwarts, because I go around the world meeting people who are changing the planet and who are showing so much love. And so, yeah, you can be absolutely the change you want to see in the world. I think Gandhi hit the nail on the head. Be the change in the world you want to see, and to love each other.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been so amazing to speak to you.
I really enjoyed myself.